Good morning, bio students. Welcome to your short week here before Thanksgiving. Today we're going to be talking about learning target D1, which is surface area to volume ratio and why cells divide. And really what we're going after today is the big question that we started talking about last week. Last week I told you the story of how you went from being one cell big to many cells big. Now you're over 100 trillion cells big. And you've been reproducing that one original cell over and over and over again by first copying the DNA and then moving copies of DNA to opposite sides of the cell and then cutting the cells in half, and then each new cell has an identical copy of your original set of DNA. And you've done that over and over and over again, and over time your cell types have specialized. So you've got liver cells that are different than skin cells, that are different than nerve cells, but they all carry the same instructions. They just read different parts of the instructions. We went over all of that last week. Today we're going to answer the question, why do we have so many little cells and not just be made out of fewer larger cells? It's an important concept in biology, and it actually touches on an important fundamental science concept that's kind of important to a lot of different science classes, science disciplines, science careers. This is just kind of a general idea in science that's important to know for reasons beyond biology, but it's really important to biology too. So here we go. Why are we made out of 100 trillion small cells instead of one big cell? Well, there's two factors that limit how large a cell can get, and the big one is going to be this idea of surface area to volume ratio, and that's our main theme that we're going to look at today. I'm going to teach you how to calculate surface area to volume ratio. I'm going to tell you why it's significant to biology. So think about how cells do their job. Your cells, when you're one cell big, that cell first had to grow. Now a cell has to grow by adding materials to itself, which means that it has to diffuse in proteins and carbohydrates and fats and nucleic acids, are building blocks of cells. They have to diffuse in. Where are they diffusing from? Well, your molecules that you use to make your cells bigger come from the food that mom ate. It diffused into her blood and diffused into her placenta that was connected to you, to your original first cells developing. And so you got all the molecules to build parts onto your first original cell from the food that mom ate. You absorbed food from her. Then you added those molecules to your cells until that cell got very large, and then that cell had to divide eventually. The reason it had to divide was so that it can pick up more membrane compared to how much guts that cell had. So think about that. Cells pass everything they need through that membrane, through that semi-permeable membrane. We looked at that in the last unit, that the membrane does a lot of moving molecules through itself. The more membrane a cell can have, the happier that cell is. And the trick to getting more membrane compared to the amount of insides a cell has, the trick to doing that is making the cell as small as possible while still having all the equipment on board. So your cells need ribosomes and a nucleus and mitochondria and all the parts we talked about in the last unit. They have to have all those parts. But a cell wants to be as small as it can be and still have all those parts on board, because that's how it's going to maximize the amount of membrane it has compared to how much insides it has. So scientists would describe that as saying cells like to have a high surface area to volume ratio. When I compare the surface area to the volume, I want lots of surface area compared to how much space the cell takes up. Okay, so this is just a good rule to know in all of science. As things get smaller, their surface area to volume ratio gets bigger. This is also why chemistry goes faster with small particles. So the example I always go to, because I'm kind of a car nerd, but the example I always go to is if I took a puddle of gasoline or a tank full of gasoline and I dropped a match in it. Don't do that. Don't try this at home, kids. But if you dropped a match into liquid gasoline, it would burn, and it would burn pretty violently and probably make an out-of-control fire. But liquid gasoline is flammable, not explosive. So liquid gasoline is flammable, not explosive. But if I took that same gasoline and I turned it into teeny tiny itty bitty little droplets, like how it would blow out of a carburetor jet or how it would blow out of fuel injectors in a car engine, I take liquid gasoline, I turn it into little teeny tiny droplets, I can make that burning chemical reaction go much faster, and then I would call it an explosion. So gasoline can be made into an explosive by making the particles of gasoline very small. What I did when I vaporized my gasoline like that is I made my surface area to volume ratio very high. And that makes chemistry go faster because molecules can interact with each other more often if there's more surface area exposed. So that's what makes gasoline in your engine an explosive, but gasoline in your gas tank is just flammable. Not saying it's not dangerous, but it's not an explosive. Notice that you don't see car accidents happen and then cars just go like kaboom into a giant mushroom cloud like they do in action movies. Cars don't really do that because the gasoline in the gas tank is a liquid. It's flammable but not explosive. But gasoline in the engine, little bits of it at a time, get squirted into the engine in a fine mist, and then it's an explosive. We need an explosive in our engine because the explosion is what drives the pistons down in the engine, and that makes the drive shaft go roundy, and that makes the wheels go roundy. That's how cars work. So I'm trying to establish this in your brain, that this idea of surface area to volume ratio is not just important in a biology class. It's applicable to all kinds of different scenarios where we want chemistry to go fast, or if we need something to be able to take particles from its surroundings quickly. Being small is an advantage because it increases your surface area to volume ratio. Okay, so let's talk about surface area to volume ratio. In this class, since you're in 9th or 10th grade here, I'm going to try to keep the math simple. And I'm guessing that at some point and somewhere along your high school career, probably in a math class, somebody taught you how to calculate surface area to volume ratio. We're going to go through a refresher on that because it's important to know how to do. But basically what you're going to need to be able to calculate is both the surface area and volume of objects. We're going to stick with cubes because it's the easiest one to do. And you do indeed have cube-shaped cells inside your body. So it's not an exaggeration to say that some of your cells are cube-shaped. They're also the easiest to calculate surface area to volume ratio for. But I'm guessing that if you really worked at it, you could figure out how to do spherical cells too. You just have to calculate the surface area of a sphere and the volume of a sphere. So we're going to go through that here in a minute. But first I wanted to show you this little example here. In this little diagram, we've got a cube here that's got a surface area of, well, it's a cube that's 1 by 1 by 1 cube. So 1 unit long, 1 unit tall, 1 unit deep. Okay. To calculate its surface area, I would calculate the area of one surface. I'd take 1 times 1 and I'd get 1. And then a cube has 6 surfaces, just like a dice has 6 sides, right? 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6 on the side you can't see. So we would take, to do surface area, I'd take 1 times 1 and I'd get us, each surface has an area of 1 unit. And then I've got 6 surfaces, so I times it by 6. So this has a surface area of, where is it? There it is, 6, okay? The volume is going to be length by width by height. So that's 1 times 1 times 1. So it has a volume of 1 cubic unit. If I wanted to do the surface area to volume ratio, when I say the word ratio, I'm talking a division problem. So I would take 6, divide it by 1, and I would get 6. The surface area to volume ratio of this cube is 6. And that's what they calculated down here. If I took this cube now, and I allowed it to grow. Let's say this cube is a cell, and it absorbs nutrients from its surroundings. Okay, absorbs proteins and carbohydrates and nucleic acids and proteins, and it built more parts on itself. And finally, our cell is a big fat cell. Now it's got a surface area, or it's got a side length of 5. So 5 tall, 5 deep, 5 long. So now if I wanted to calculate surface area, I'd take 5 times 5. I'd get 25. I'd multiply that by 6. I'd get 150. And then if I wanted to do volume, I'd take 5 times 5 times 5, I'd get 125. Now if I took 150 and divided by 25, I'd get a surface area to volume ratio of 1.2. So look, even though every dimension, both my surface area and my volume got bigger, when I compare the two, the comparative amount of surface I have on this cube versus how much guts it has, how much space it takes up, has gone down to 1.2, a ratio of 1.2. In other words, as this thing grew, it has less surface per volume. So if I have to take in nutrients and stuff, I've got more guts that those nutrients have to diffuse through before I could get to I don't know, like a mitochondria or the nucleus or whatever inside here. I'd have a harder time getting to all those things I need to get to if I've got a bigger cell. That's what this low surface area to volume ratio number means. If I then took the cell and allowed it to divide over and over and over again until I got back to cubes that were the size of our original cubes, look, oh, there my surface area to volume ratio went right back up again. So surface area to volume ratio is an important concept to understand mathematically, but also you should understand that here, if I've got blood going between these cells, now all of these little cells, even in the middle, have access to proteins and carbohydrates, nucleic acids, oxygen, carbon dioxide, whatever needs to move in and out of these cells can move through these gaps in between. That's why surface area to volume ratio is important. That's why you're made out of trillions of small cells rather than just one big cell. Okay, so same deal here. They're just trying to show you the same thing again. So again, I'm going to go through how to quickly calculate surface area to volume ratio. So let's do this one time. Just watch a practice problem, and we're going to work with this again tomorrow. So let's say I've got a cube. I'm going to pick a cube that has a side length of 2 centimeters. That means it's 2 centimeters across, 2 centimeters tall, 2 centimeters deep. If I wanted to calculate its surface area, here's how I do it. Surface area is equal to length times width, right? Length times width. So you do that just like how you would figure out how much carpet to buy in your living room. You'd measure the length and the width and multiply the two together. So I'd take 2 times 2, 2 times 2, and I would get I'd get 4, but that would be just one side of this cube. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides to this cube. So I got to multiply it by the 6 sides that I just figured out the surface area of. So length by width by 6 for the 6 sides of the cube. So let's fill in what I know now. I know my surface area is going to be length of 2 centimeters times a width of 2 centimeters times 6. 2 times 2 is 4. Times 6, that's going to give me a surface area of 48 centimeters cubic centimeter, square centimeters. That was surface area. So each one of these is a two-dimensional surface. So 2 times 2 would be 4, right? And then I've got 6 of those sides that have a surface area of 4 square centimeters. So 6 times 4, right? Wait, did I do that right? Hold on. My it's early in the morning. My brain's not working right. 2 times 2 is 4 times 6. That's 24. What's wrong with me? You know. Yeah. All right. Where's my pen now? A little rusty this morning. Sorry. So it's 24 centimeters cubed, right? 2 times 2 is 4 times 6. 4 times 6 is 24. Wow. Okay. So that's how I did surface area. Now I got to do volume, right? You know, volume's the easy one. Volume is how much space something takes up. So now I'm going to do 2 centimeters times 2 centimeters times 2 centimeters. I should have done this with letters first. Hopefully you already know the equation for volume, but volume for a cube is going to be length times width times height. So I was just already replacing my letters. Here we go. So that's going to be 2 centimeters times 2 centimeters times 2 centimeters. So I'm going to take 2 times 2, that's 4, times 2 is 8. So my volume is equal to 8 centimeters cubed. Okay, now if I want to do surface area to volume ratio, surface area to volume ratio is going to be the same thing as surface area divided by volume. So I'm going to have 24, hold on, 24, I'm going to divide it by 8. I'm going to get a surface area to volume ratio of 3 centimeters. Oh, actually, units cancel. So this ratio is a ratio, which means it's a multiplier. It's one of the only times you're ever going to run into, in math, it's one of the only times you're ever going to run into something that's a unitless value. What you need to know about this number is that if it's big, a cell is unhappy. If it's small, a cell is happy. The smaller, or I'm sorry, I said that the opposite way around. I am really clumsy this morning. This number, you want it to be as big as possible. You get that number as big as possible by making these two numbers as small as possible. In other words, the smaller this cube gets, the larger this surface area to volume ratio number is going to be. So think of this as like the number that's telling you how fast diffusion and osmosis can go. The bigger it is, the faster it's going. The bigger this number is, the surface area to volume ratio, the smaller this cell is that we started with. All right, if you followed me through that example problem, that's great. We're going to work on some more of these examples starting tomorrow. It's a pretty important concept to understand, surface area to volume ratio. If you are confused or you're totally lost on this, or you're like, wow, Mr. Issy, you made a million mistakes this morning, there are lots of videos on YouTube that would be helpful. If you just typed in calculate surface area to volume ratio of a cube, there would be lots of videos out there that will walk you through. I'll post another review video up in the unit resources folder for this unit. If you have questions on that or you're confused by anything, feel free to email me. Like I said, we're going to be working with this again tomorrow. I want to make sure that everybody is solid with how to calculate surface area to volume ratio. That's all I got for you today. Hopefully you were able to follow through that. Hopefully you understand why this is relevant to cells, but also understand that surface area to volume ratio is relevant to other things besides just cells in science. All right, that is all for now. We're going to start with DNA overload later on. Probably till not after Thanksgiving, really, because we're going to practice surface area to volume ratio tomorrow. That's all I got for you today. Have a good one.